To keep yourself updated, subscribe to Indigo Learn and click the bell icon and download our app OneFin to start learning on the go.
Now let us take up the topic-wise discussion. So that first topic, the questions for revision here are, the first question, in the nature, objective and scope of audit. There are practical and legal limitations on the auditor's ability to obtain audit evidence. Explain giving examples. Also explain the difference between audit and investigation. Okay, so the question is very simple. It is only talking about the audit procedures that we are going to follow. Okay, because of the nature of audit procedures. Understand, the question is telling you there is practical and legal limitations on the auditor's ability. So basically they are trying to tell us that you have to give examples because of which, however hard you try or however well the audit is conducted, there is a possibility that some information will not be known. There could be a reason because of management not revealing everything, okay, intentionally hiding certain facts, frauds, concealment is going to be there. Okay, so these are the things that you have to explain here. Quite a straightforward question. Then you have also explained the difference between audit and investigation. Again, a straightforward question. We have audit, which is going to be the examination of financial statements with a view to give opinion. Investigation is to establish a fact. Audit is basically we have no mindset that there is going to be something wrong. We are simply going with an understanding of examination of the financial statements. Investigation, we are establishing a fact, so there is a doubt in our mind and that is the reason the investigation is being conducted. Audit is conducted by the chartered accountants. Investigation happens by the expert team. In audit, we have more of persuasive audit evidences. In investigation, you require conclusive audit evidences. Also, one very important point, sometimes audit could be an initial stage for the investigation process to start because the auditor could find out something which will give a kickstart to the investigation. So, there is a difference, a good difference between what is audit and investigation. Alright, so that's a simple one. Then the next question taken up here is, the auditor cannot be expected to disregard the past experience of honesty and integrity of the entity's management and TCWG. Nevertheless, a belief that the management and TCWG are honest and have integrity does not relieve the auditor the need to maintain professional skepticism. A very interesting question. So here they are telling that this auditor is having he believes the management, the past experience with the management has been quite good, wherein he believes the management is reliable, the management is honest and the experience has been good. But tell me, because of your experience in the past with the management, about their integrity and all the information that they have given is reliable, this year, are you going to accept everything what they are going to tell or still you are going to maintain the attitude of professional skepticism? The answer is yes. We do agree that you cannot ignore the facts about their reliability, but then you are required to conduct the audit by keeping into mind or maintaining the attitude of questioning. So whenever you are going to evaluate audit evidences, it is important that you do critical assessment of the evidence. Whenever you get information, you have to check the reliability of the information. So it is very important that professional skepticism has to be maintained during the course of audit. There could be unusual transactions, there could be contradictory audit evidences. You cannot do overgeneralization of transactions, okay, or the audit evidences that you are coming across. So whatever it is, even if there has been a good experience in the past, this year when you conduct the audit, it is important that the attitude of questioning or critically assessing the audit evidence is important. Don't disregard their reliability, agreed, we have to respect that, but then you also have to maintain professional skepticism. So that has been questioned here. So here you can just give more examples why professional skepticism becomes important or where there is a need for the auditor to maintain the attitude of questioning. So those examples if you give, like for unusual transaction, overgeneralization, then contradictory audit evidences, okay, all of these examples you can give and you can elaborate the answer better. Alright, then now the third question, the part A of it. The firm should establish policies and procedures designed to provide it with reasonable assurance that it has sufficient personnel with the capability, competence and commitment to ethical principles. Explain stating clearly personnel issues addressed by such policies and procedures. A very simple answer. Okay, we have SA 220 which talks about the quality control. Alright, there we are required that a firm has to design the policies and procedures in order to ensure that the personnel to whom they are going to assign the engagement performance, They should have the capabilities, competence, okay, for the purpose of conducting the audit engagement. So in those policies and procedures, there are some key things that they address. So some of them you could talk about is about competence you have, then capability, then you'll have career development, then there is promotion, some recruitment, okay. So these are some of the attributes which are given in the policies, okay, which we will definitely take into consideration, and the policies and procedures should include all of these, okay. So it's about the competence, capabilities, then you'll be having regarding the career development, promotion, recruitment, okay, the personal needs evaluation, performance of their work, okay, evaluation of their performance. All of these should be included in the policy when it comes about the about your personnel, okay. So that's also simple. Then an auditor who before the completion of the engagement is requested to change the engagement to one which provides a lower level of assurance should consider the appropriateness of doing so, okay. Explain the circumstance which may contribute towards a request from the client for the auditor to change the engagement. Understand, usually in a question like this, students do a mistake in coming to an answer, in a very hurried situation, like they directly jump to the conclusion. Because what happens usually till here, if you read, you will have a mindset that they are questioning you about whether auditor can accept the limitation on the scope. Okay, in between the course of the audit, if the management is imposing the limitation, should he accept or not? Suddenly you start thinking about it, but then that becomes a wrong interpretation. The question is not about it. The question began like that, but the question has been asking, or the main crux of the question is, explain the circumstances which may contribute towards a request from the client for the auditor to change the engagement. So here we are asking about those situations where there is a possibility of such a situation where management could ask the auditor to change it, okay. So here we know that the answer could be like, there could be a miscommunication, there is a misunderstanding between the auditor and the client. There could be a possibility that there is a change in the nature of service, something which is, going to put an imposition on the scope of the engagement, which is, it is limiting the scope of the engagement. So those all things, if they are present, then definitely we are going to consider it to be what? The circumstances wherein the engagement terms and conditions could be expected to be changed by the management. So I would recommend that you read the suggested answers given here in the RTP for the understanding of this question, okay. Do not jump to a conclusion just by reading a half of it, and obviously you can give a reference to essay 210 here, okay, agreeing to the terms of audit engagement. So that is it with the question number 3B, okay. If you read the suggested answer, you will also get the remaining pointers where you will understand what are the circumstances in which the management could request the auditor to change it, alright. Then the question from the next topic, that is audit strategy, planning and program. First one, the nature, timing and extent of the direction and the supervision of the engagement team members and the review of their work vary depending upon many factors. Discuss those factors. Now quite simple, these factors are depending upon the nature of business, depending upon the complexity of the transactions, depending upon the area of risk of material misstatements, correct. So these are some of the indications given wherein because of that the level of your audit procedures, the nature, timing and extent of the supervision that you're going to have will vary. So that's a straightforward question. You could have a reference to the answer. So that's quite understandable. Then explain what do you mean by the word documentation of audit plan. Discuss the purpose served by it and also elaborate the tools used by the auditor to reflect the particular engagement circumstances. So the answer to this is quite simple. It simply says, what do you mean by documentation? So we know what is documentation. It is going to be a record of what? Nature, timing of and extent of risk assessment procedures plus nature, timing and extent of further audit procedures which we are going to use at the assertion level, correct? So that is quite simple, what do you mean by documentation of the audit plan, because in the plan we do what? Risk assessment procedures, nature, timing and extent, and we plan the further audit procedures, nature, timing and extent. So a record of that will be the documentation of the plan, correct? Discuss the purpose served by it and also elaborate the tools. What is the purpose? It is going to be a record, for the planned procedures which can be reviewed and approved, okay, before it has been implemented. And what is the tools used? So you could have standard audit programs, you have checklist, okay, which could be tailored. Okay, so these are all the tools that are used for the purpose of documentation. All right, then next question. While developing an audit program, the auditor may conclude that relying on certain internal controls in an effective and efficient way to conduct his audit. Explain stating clearly the points to be kept in mind while developing an audit program. Okay, so this is also one of the straightforward questions. So you have the key pointers given in the study material, which you simply have to jot down. Okay, so this is not something to be analyzed and all. It's a very straightforward question, and in the material you have a straight answer for it. Nevertheless, I'll give you a few pointers here so that you could recollect which part of it we're talking about here. So simple pointers here would be, you would stay within the scope and limitation of the audit assignment. Then you have to have a proper written program, including all the audit procedures that are going to be implemented. You have to take into consideration all the possibilities of errors. That is, there should be no overlooking of any particular area. Then there should be proper assignment of responsibility to the staff members. There should be proper monitoring process to be established. Coordination of all the audit procedures, correct? So these are all the things that you're going to take into account when you're drafting a proper audit program. So these are the things that you keep in mind while developing an audit program. All right. So please refer the suggested answers so that you get a clear understanding. It's a straightforward question, no complication absolutely. All right. Then look at the third topic, the questions appearing from audit documentation and audit evidence. First one. CAR comes to know some very critical information with regard to the business cycle of an entity for which he has issued an audit report, which becomes known to him as an auditor after the date of audit report, but which existed as at the date at which it, if it was known, might have caused the financial statement to be amended or the auditor to modify the opinion in the auditor's report. He wants to perform additional procedures to satisfy himself. As an auditor, what he shall document on the matters arising after the date of audit report. So here the question is basically talking about an event which is happening after the date on which the audit report has been given. Okay, so we are basically talking about a subsequent event. Okay, but this, though our responsibility comes to an end after submitting the audit report, here we are in a situation where the auditor believes that this fact, if it was known to the auditor earlier, there could be a change in the audit report. So he is going to perform additional procedures. Now the question here is not about SA 560, rather the questioning is about documentation pertaining to that. So when you read the question very carefully, here they are telling you, as an auditor, what shall be documented on the matter arising after the date of audit report. So after the date of audit report, like we have to give a clear understanding about what were the additional audit procedures applied, okay, then who performed them, what was the conclusion drawn. Then also what were the changes, who and when the changes were made in the documentation. All of that is what is going to be considered. So quite simple, the answer would be for documentation. First, what will be the circumstances encountered? Okay. Then you will be having about all the new or additional procedures. And once you apply procedures, you will have evidences. From evidences, you will draw conclusions. So all of that you will document. And finally, when, by whom also, and reviewed also. Okay, so all of these things you are going to make a note of in your documentation. So when, by whom it was done and reviewed. Okay, all of that will be documented. Then next, the auditor shall prepare audit documentation that is sufficient to enable an experienced auditor to understand significant matters arising during audit. Explain the above statement and also give examples of the significant matters. Very simple. When you talk about SA 230, okay, very clearly they give you that how an audit documentation should be. So they gave a very clear understanding that the documentation should be in such a manner that an experienced auditor who has no prior experience with the particular client, when he looks at the documentation, he'll be able to understand all the significant matters which are encountered, all the conclusions drawn, all the significant judgment made, all the audit procedures applied, everything. So if he is able to understand just by looking at the documentation, that is considered to be a documentation which is acceptable. Alright. So that is what they are telling here. And explain the above statement. So you have to give an explanation to that which we did, that what you mean by understanding the significant matter. So the experienced auditor should be able to understand it. So you should be having the objective analysis of understanding the audit documentation. On the similar lines, they also ask you to give some examples for significant matters. that we know very well. Significant matters are what? Matters which are, could lead for modification of the audit opinion. Matters which are indicating there is a misstatement in the financial statement. Matters which could make the auditor reassess the risk that he has assessed earlier, okay, because of which the response will change to the assessed risk, correct? Then there could be matters which would lead the auditor to introduce a paragraph like emphasis of matter paragraph, correct? Anything which is an indicator of fraud. So all of these could be some significant matters which, the auditor has to understand, okay, or which would be an example for a significant matter which we are talking about here, all right? So these obviously we are going to have a documentation to be done. So that was also a simple question. So next one is 7th. An auditor is called upon to assess the actualities of the situation, review the statement of account and give an expert opinion about the truth and fairness of such accounts. This he cannot do unless he has examined the financial statement objectively. Explain. So this is a very general question been asked, and one important thing that you have to understand here is they are questioning about objectivity. And when we talk about the ethical requirements of the auditor, we understand objectivity is something that the auditor has to give an opinion based on the evidences that he has obtained. So they have to be established on the fact that you have come across during the course of the audit. So indirectly, the question is actually focusing on what? SA 500 audit evidence. Because objectivity simply says that when the auditor is giving an opinion, these opinions should be based on something. They should not be biased. They should not be by the, the judgment of the auditor without considering any information underlying it. So indirectly, the question is focusing upon what? SA 500, that means they are telling that the auditor is required to design the audit procedures in such a manner that is able to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidences based on which he is going to give the audit opinion. Got it? So in fact, SA 500 has to be explained here, and you have to design your procedures in such a manner and conduct the audit in such a manner that the opinion that you are giving is based upon the sufficient and appropriate audit evidences that you have obtained. Audit is a logical process, correct? And when you talk about objectivity, it is like a critical assessment of the information that you have got. If you do the audit recklessly, without taking into account all the information available, and if you do that negligently, then in that case you will be exposed to all the legal obligations. Okay, professionally guilty you will be. Because of which it is very important that you perform the audit with a view that you obtain evidences which are sufficient and appropriate. Only then we consider that audit to be conducted in an objective manner. And the opinion that you are giving is based on objectivity. So only because of this word, the entire meaning of the question is derived based on 500, that is audit evidence. Okay, so look at the way the question is formulated. Here, above you feel it is all generalized, but only because of one word, there is an indication to the mention of SA 500. Okay, so you have to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence, and on that basis only you have to give the conclusions. Correct? Then, next question. Manya Textiles is a manufacturer of bed sheets, curtain cloths, other handloom items, etc., having its plant at Manipal or Panipat. So sorry, it's Panipat. Auditor SJ and company is having doubts over the reliability of the information given to him as audit evidence. Also, auditors observed inconsistent information while conducting the audit. Guide the auditor as to how they should proceed in the given situation. Now, this also is quite understandable. Whenever there is going to be inconsistency, okay, with the audit evidences that you've obtained, that means two procedures, two different evidences about one particular matter, and both are giving a contradictory answers. One is telling there is no misstatement, other is telling there is misstatement. Similarly, you have got information from a source which is not reliable. In that case, are you going to believe on it and give opinion? No. So there is going to be a modification to the nature, timing and extent of your audit procedures. You are going to perform additional audit procedures, modify your existing audit procedures, and also check the impact that it will have on the other area of audit. Only then you will be able to give conclusion. Okay? Then, 8th one. External confirmation procedures frequently are relevant when addressing assertions associated with account balances and their elements, but need not be restricted to these items. Apart from confirmation from bank balances and account receivables, what are the other situations where external confirmation procedures may be provided, which provide relevant audit evidence in responding to the assessed risk of material misstatement? So when you talk about SA 505, okay, SA 505, we know that external confirmations could be required not only in these areas, but you could obtain at other things also. Like you could get the information regarding the inventory lying with the third party at the bonded warehouses. Okay, then there could be a possibility that some of the property title deeds have been kept with the lawyers for safe custody. So you could get a confirmation from them. Then there could be information regarding your account payable balances and also the terms and conditions associated. Then the amounts that we owe to the lenders, their terms. Okay, so all of these things also could be obtained through the external confirmation. So you could give some more examples here. Then you have risk assessment and internal controls, the next topic. So here the question is regarding the monitoring of control component. Okay, here the question is how monitoring of control would be helpful in assessing the effectiveness. Obviously, you'll be able to detect timely everything and take remedial actions. How can management accomplish the controls? By reviewing on regular basis. What is included in the management's monitoring activities? Review and supervision. You could also take some kind of access to the customer complaints and understand what is the real position, all of that. So this is a very simple question where you could go to the suggested answers given here and get an idea about it. Then explain the matters which should be included for the factors relevant to the auditor's judgment about whether a control is relevant to the audit or not. This also answer is quite straightforward, like you will take into account the materiality, size of the entity, nature of the entity's business, complexity of the transactions, the legal and regulatory framework, okay, size and nature of the entity, okay, complexity of the entity's business. All of these you will take into consideration and understand whether control is relevant or not. Then 10th question, the review of the internal control will enable the auditor to know the areas where control is weak. Explain stating clearly the benefit of evaluation. So this also you have an answer straightforward given. So what would be the benefit of evaluation? Just to give you some examples, benefit would be you will be able to understand whether controls are weak or controls are good, whether a particular area there is a proper internal audit department operating or not, whether controls as are mentioned by the management, whether they are really operating or not, then whether whatever controls are there, they are sufficient, okay, whether they are effectively operating, and if they are operating, are they operating throughout the year, okay. So there are multiple things that you will understand by the evaluation of the control, and this will definitely help in designing the further audit procedures for the auditor. So this also is the benefit which is very clearly given in the material, okay. These are straight theory questions. Then we have fraud and responsibility of the auditor in this regard. What I would do is, the 11th and 12th question will read the question here first, and then we'll go to the suggested answers, because this is again example oriented, where you will get exposed to the examples and you understand what kind of answer we are expected to write, okay. So look at that, first one, fraudulent financial reporting often involves management's override of control that otherwise may appear to be operating effectively. Illustrate techniques by which fraud can be committed by the management overriding the controls. We know as per SA 240, there are two types of frauds which are highlighted. One is fraudulent financial reporting. Then we have misappropriation of the assets. Here the question is based on fraudulent financial reporting, where management is overriding the controls and doing some kind of window dressing of the financial statements. So here the question is, illustrate the techniques. How can this be done? So by booking fictitious entries, omission of some important matters, concealing some data, okay, so there is overvaluation, undervaluation, all intentionally done. So you could give examples which I will take you through to the suggested answers. You will get how to write the answer. Write the examples of the circumstances that indicate the possibility of fraud due to problematic or unusual relationship between the auditor and the management. So this is also very clearly given, where there is a relationship, the relationship between the client and the auditor is problematic, because of which there is no clear flow of information. Whatever the management is questioning, the auditor is questioning the management, they are unnecessarily delaying it, giving excuses, not making the data available. Okay, so there is some kind of, a problem which is happening, which is an indicator of fraud. So that also we'll understand by reading the suggested answers. Okay, so let's go once to the suggested answers so that you get an understanding. So the 11th question, so here if you look at the technique of the frauds committed by management by overriding controls, see, recording fictitious entries, that is all the fake entries, inappropriate adjusting assumptions. So, all the assumptions, like in the financial statements, there are multiple assumptions, judgments made by the management, because the nature of reporting is like that. So there also there could be inappropriate assumptions. Then omitting or advancing or delaying, purposefully, delaying the recording, or purposefully omitting, not recording the fact absolutely. All these are the indications that management is trying to override the control. Then you are concealing, not disclosing, engaging in complex transactions, because even if you're trying to explain, there could be a possibility that the complexity will not enable the auditor to understand the possibility of fraud involved. Then altering the records, manipulating, tampering of data, okay, which are regular in nature, we can understand, but something which are unusual, okay, then there will be a problem. Then comes to examples of circumstances that indicate possibility of fraud due to problematic or unusual relationship. So we'll take one or two for your understanding. Denial of access to records, which I told you, they will not give you access to the records, okay, like certain employee records, customers, vendors, or other information which could be important evidence for the auditor. Undue time pressure imposed by the management. You're forcing the auditor to complete the audit within the given time frame. So that also is going to be a problematic thing. Unusual delay by the entity in providing information to the auditor. Then accounting policies that appear to be variance with the industry norms. So the industries are accepting certain accounting policies and the client is having some other. But when the auditor is trying to understand, there is no proper understanding given to him. Okay, so all of this is because of the problematic relationship between the client and the auditor. So you have multiple examples given there. Okay, you could have a look at it, and we expect out of 12 at least you'll be able to write 8 at least in the examination.